Good evening, everyone. So today we'll be starting with antihypertensive agents. So hypertension, when you say it's not a disease, so usually it is not a disease. It is arbitrarily defined disorder to which both environmental and genetic factor contribute. So in hypertension, your both environment as well as your genetic factor contribute. So what basically hypertension is an increase in BP such that the systolic is above 140 mm of Hg and diastolic is above 90 mm of Hg on two or more occasion after initial screening. So once you take your BP, if it is more consecutively is more than 140 by 90, then it is the patient is suffering from hypertension, and the basic normal range is 120 by 80 mm of Hg. So this is your normal. So what are the types of hypertension? First type is essential hypertension, most common. About 90% of patients suffer from the your essential hypertension. Exact origin not known. So contributing factor may be family history, that is genetic, or hyperlipidemia, diabetes, obesity, aging, stress, excessive alcoholism, smoking. So this might be the reason for essential hypertension. Secondary hypertension is 10% and related to endocrine and renal disorder. Related to your endocrine and renal disorder. So let us see some of the stages. So normal is 85 to diastolic 85, systolic 139. Stage 1 is 92, diastolic is 90 to 99, 140, 149. So these are the different stage 2, 100, 109 diastolic and systolic 165. And stage 3 is more than 109 diastolic and more than 179 mm of Hg in case of diastolic pressure. So these are the range which people try to see. And one more thing that you have to always remember: your blood pressure changes with your age, which is related to your elasticity of your blood vessels and pumping action of your heart. So these all things have to be considered. So age is also one of the criteria which you have to consider when you are looking out for hypertension. So what is normal blood pressure? So blood pressure is nothing but it's a product of your cardiac output and total peripheral resistance. Okay, peripheral is maintained by your arterioles, postcapillary venules, and heart. So this is how your blood pressure. So whenever you're trying to calculate the blood pressure, you have to know these two criteria plays an important role. That is cardiac output, that is how much amount of blood is pumped out of the heart, and what is the resistance which is applied on the blood vessels when the blood flow. So these are the two factors that are considered in blood pressure. So there are something called baroreceptors or baroreflex. They regulate the BP. So this the central sympathetic neurons in the vasomotor area are tonically active. So when there is a stretch in this vessel wall, so whenever so it is when there is a stretch in the, so when there is a lot of pressure on the vessels walls brought by rise in pressure, the baroreceptor which are present leads to stimulation and inhibits the sympathetic discharge. So they send signals to the brain to reduce the discharge of your sympathetic uh, sympathetic discharge, that is. And when there is a fall in BP, there is a reduction in the stretching leading to increased baroactivity, leading to increased total peripheral resistance and current. So both the things are regulated, thereby restoring your normal blood pressure. So this baroreceptor which are present in the carotid arteries, so they are very much responsible for your maintaining of your blood pressure in our body. There are other systems like renin angiotensin, aldosterone system, RS system, that is your kidney, they also play a important role in your blood pressure regulation, and also local agents like nitric oxide. So they also have an vasodilatory effect and thus decrease the total peripheral resistance. Okay, so this is how the blood pressure is maintained, and these are the factors which are responsible for maintaining your blood pressure. All antihypertensive act via interfering with one or more of the normal mechanisms. So your antihypertensive act on any one of this normal mechanism for regulation of your blood pressure. So this is how the drug antihypertensives. So let us see how the mechanism of blood pressure regulation. So when there is a decrease in blood pressure, so they stimulate your endocrine mechanism, which release your aldosterone, angiotensin 2, aldosterone. So this will increase your blood volume. So thus when the blood volume is increased, so your fluid level in the blood also is met. Next is your neural mechanism. So this neural mechanism, they stimulate your baroreceptor, cardiovascular center are stimulated, and general sympathetic activation, release of epinephrine and norm. So this will increase your cardiac output, peripheral resistance is increased blood pressure and decreased venous resistance. So it reduces your cardiac output also by reducing your venous resistance, and thus maintain your fluidity in your blood. As I mentioned about the baroreceptor, they maintain your arterial pressure. They are present. They are found in the carotid, that is near your neck region. Okay, they respond to any changes, progressive changes at 60 to between 60 to 180 mm of Hg. So when there is a decrease in pressure, or as when there is an increase in pressure, blood pressure, they will respond and try to maintain the blood pressure. So this is the similar thing, that is how the decrease in blood pressure stimulates your sympathetic system, that inhibits your activation of beta 1 adrenoreceptor on heart. Also activation, also it increases to activation of your alpha 1 adrenoreceptor in the smooth muscles. So what happens when the alpha 1 receptors in the smooth muscles gets activated, they increase your peripheral resistance. When there is an activation of your beta 1 receptors, they will increase your pumping of your heart, thus increase the cardiac output, and overall there is an increase in blood pressure. Now let's go for renal blood flow. What happens? So when there is a decreased in renal flow, this will decrease the glomerular filtration rate. So this will lead to your sodium and water retention. Okay. So this sodium and water retention leads to increase in blood volume, that leads to increase in cardiac output. So this is one. Next is this renin blood. When the renin flow is when the renal blood flow is reduced, okay, this stimulates the release of renin, which releases your angiotensin 2, which increases your peripheral resistance. Also it increases your aldosterone release, which relates to your sodium and water retention, thus increasing the blood volume, and thus this all will increase your blood pressure when there is a decrease. This is your mechanism how the body responds to decrease in blood pressure. Okay. Now what is hypertensive agent? These drugs are used in the treatment of hypertension act by reducing the cardiac output or reducing the total peripheral resistance without correcting the cause. So they just used to either reduce your cardiac output or reduce your peripheral resistance. So these are anti-hypertension. They try to maintain the blood pressure by acting on any of these parameters. Now let's go for the classification. So some drugs act centrally, drugs like act on your autonomic ganglia, drugs may act on postganglion sympathetic nerves endings, drugs acting on adrenergic receptor, that is beta 1 alpha 1 receptors, drugs acting on vascular smooth muscle, that is alpha 1 receptor, potassium channel activators, that are like your sodium nitroprusside, drugs which block your renin angiotensin aldosterone axis, that is your losartan. Examples: AC inhibitors, oral diuretics like chlorothiazides, and so these are the classification of your anti-hypertensive agent. Now let's go into detail. Now sympatholytic, so which they act against the brain. So centrally acting alpha 2 adrenergic receptor stimulants like clonidine and methyl dopamine. So alpha 2 adrenergic receptor stimulant, that is clonidine and methyl. Alpha 2 alpha adrenergic blockers like alpha 2 alpha 1 adrenergic blockers like prazosin, terazosin, and phentolamine. Beta adrenergic blocker like propranolol, metoprolol, and atenolol. Alpha and beta adrenergic blocker, both alpha and beta adrenergic blocker labetalol and carbidiol. Ganglionic blocker like guanethidine and hexamethonium. Some of the sympatholytic drugs. Next class of the is vasodilators like potassium channel openers, arteriolar, that is hydralazine, minoxidil, sodium nitroprusside, arterial plus venous sodium nitroprusside. Calcium channel blockers are verapamil, nifedipine, felodipine, and amlodipine, which contains all the three classes of your calcium channel blockers. Next class is diuretics, thiazide diuretic like hydrochlorothiazide, indapamide, loop diuretic like furosemide, potassium sparing diuretics like spironolactone and amiloride, angiotensin inhibitors and antagonists, that is AC inhibitors, and angiotensin receptor antagonists like captopril, enalapril, ramipril, losartan, candesartan, and direct renin inhibitor like aliskiren. So these are the examples of the antihypertensive agent. Now let us see the potential sites where the antihypertensive agents act. Where all the antihypertensive agents? So in the CNS, they have beta blockers and alpha 2 antagonist. So alpha 2 agonist act on your CNS. Next class is your heart. There are beta receptors present over there. So the beta blockers act, thus maintaining your cardiac output. Blood vessels contain your alpha 1 receptor, calcium channel blockers, vasodilators, AT1 receptor antagonist, and AC. Okay. The kidney diuretics, beta blockers, and AC. So these are the various sites where the drugs antihypertensive act. Okay. These are the areas where the antihypertensive agents act. Now let's start with beta adrenergic blockers, that is non-selective, propranolol. Others are nadolol, timolol, pinadol, and levodopa. Cardioselective are metoprolol. Others are etoprolol, esmolol, and metoxolol. So non-selective is propranolol and cardioselective is metoprolol. All beta blockers have similar antihypertensive irrespective of additional properties. They will be beta blockers. So mechanism of action. Potential site of beta blockers is beta 1 receptors in the brain may also be the site of action. Blockade of myocardial beta 1 receptors decreases the force and rate of contraction. So if the beta 1 beta which work, they will have their effect on the action potential generation as well as your force of contraction. Okay, so it will have positive negative chronotropic as well as inotropic effect. So in the blood vessels, also the beta 1 receptors are present. Blockade of renal beta 1 receptors blocks the release of your renin, blocks the release of your renin. So the beta 1 reduces by decreasing cardiac output. As I mentioned, it will reduce the force of contraction. So when the force of contraction is reduced, your cardiac output is reduced. Okay. They also decrease the sympathetic outflow from your CNS as they, and also inhibit your renin release from your. So they act on the beta 1 receptors which are present in it. So they will prevent the release of your sympathetic sympathetic, like your epinephrine release will be prevented. Thus, so they also inhibit the release of renin from your kidney, thus decreasing the production of angiotensin II, and aldosterone secretion, thus reducing the sodium and water retention. So this is how the mechanism of action of your beta blockers. So where all they are present and what are the effects. Okay. Now let's go for the SAR of beta blockers. SAR of the beta blocker. If you see in the structure, it contains an phenyl ring which contains an aromatic ring. That is your aromatic ring with a substitution and a beta ethanol amine and a beta ethanol amine. So at the beta position, there is an OH. So I'll be showing you in the board the structures of the drug. So please look at it. So let's go for the structure of beta blockers. Okay. Basically, it contains an aromatic ring with an X. If X can be CH2 or OCH2, and it contains an OH, CH2, and H, R1. So this is alpha. So it contains an beta ethanol amine, a substituted aromatic ring. So these are the basic requirements of your. These are the basic requirements of your beta blockers. Okay. So what are things? It should contain an aromatic ring and a beta ethanol amine. Okay. These are the basic. Now let's see. The aromatic ring can either be a benzo heterocyclic, that is your indole. It can be a fused benzene fused heterocyclic compounds like your indole, or a heterocyclic compound like a thiadiazole. So it can be, and your aromatic ring can be benzene or indole or an thiadiazole. Okay. Okay, it can be a thiadiazole also, means sulfur along with 2 nitrogen. Okay, so these are the substitutions that can be present. This is mandatory. This is the requirement. Okay, the side chains can be variable. The side chain. So the aromatic will be an benzene, or it might contain an indole or a thiadiazole. Okay, the side chain, the X, if we can see in the structure, there is an X. The X part of the side can either be directly linked, so there is no, it can be directly linked. Your aromatic ring can be directly linked to your side chain, or through an, this X can be nothing, no, or X can be OCH2. Okay, so these are the some of the, so they can be directly linked, or it can be linked through an OCH2. The X, when the X is CH2, that is an ethylene, ethyl substitute, ethylene group, or an double bond alkene, or an S-methylene, or an N-methylene. There is no activity or decreased activity. Okay, the R dash can be a secondary substituent, and a branched is optimal. So your amine should always be a secondary amine with a branched substitution which favors the activity. So it should be a branched alkyl group at the N terminal. Okay, the R dash group can second is for optimal. The alkyl CH3 group substituted at the, if there is an alkyl substitute at the alpha and beta. So if there is any substitution at this position, if you can see CH2, that is alpha, and your beta carbon, if there is an substitution CH3 alkyl substitute at alpha and beta substitution, lowers the beta blockade, especially at the carbon. So this will block the activity. Okay, except in case of OCH2. So there should be no substitution at your alpha and beta carbon. Okay. Now the general rule for substitution of your aromatic ring. So now we are going for this thing is done. So it should be, amine should always be an tertiary or secondary amine with a branched alkyl group. There should be no substitution at alpha and beta carbon, and the X can be directly attached or through an OCH2 for the better activity. It should contain a beta ethanol group. Okay, now let's go for the substitution rule for your aromatic ring. So if ortho substitution, so in case of non-selective beta blockers, more preferred is in case of your ortho is more preferred over beta and para. So if there is an ortho substituted benzene, if there is an ortho substituted aromatic ring, they will show a major non-selective beta blocker. So they will not have any selectivity towards the beta blocker. Large para substitution usually decreases, but retain that. So if there is a substitution at large substitution at the para position, the activity is lost. But if the same substitution at the ortho group, some activity is retained. Poly substitution on carbon 2 and 6. So if there is a poly substitution at 2 and 6 makes the compounds inactive. But when the substitution is on 3 and 5, there is some activity. So 3 and 5 substitution compound shows active, whereas in case of your ortho substituted, di substituted, poly substituted, the activity is lost. For higher cardioselectivity, if you want to have a cardioselective activity, the substitution should be of the following order. So in case of cardioselectivity, the substitution should be para, beta and ortho. So if there is a para substitution, the cardioselectivity increases. All the beta blockers are of one isomer, that is S-aryloxypropylamine. So and R-ethanolamine. So this should be the stereochemistry of your beta blocker. So this is the SAR of your beta blockers. Now let's go for the structure of your compound. Let's go for the structures of your, you have to remember atenolol, metoprolol, you have to pinidol. I have kept this so that you can recollect with your SAR. So in case of atenolol, okay, in case of atenolol, it is a cardioselective. So what do you see? You got the same thing. You got an isopropyl group which is attached to your N. So you look at the structure. I'll be explaining you one by one. See the modification that is occurring. So atenolol, let me start with the nitrogen. So you got an isopropyl group. Okay, this is a secondary amine which is connected to an beta hydroxy. This is alpha beta. This is beta ethanol amine substitution, which is then connected by CH2O group to an aromatic. Okay. Now, so you have got this part. Now at the para position. So if what did he say in our SAR? So cardioselectivity is obtained when there is an para substitution. More cardioselectivity is attained when there is an para. So this is CH2, C double bond O, C NH2. This is acetamide linkage. Okay, there is an acetamide linkage which is attached to your phenyl. Aromatic ring at the para position. Rest all things is the same. This is the structure of your atenolol. Okay. Now let's go to the structure of your ismethylol. Okay. The structure is same. What is the difference in atenolol and ismethylol? It contains over here. Your para substitution is only different. Your para substitution is different. It contains an CH2. So it contains an 1, 2, 3. So it contains an methyl propionate. So it contains an methyl propionate ester group attached to your para. That is your ismethylol. So that is your is. So only change that is occurring, if you can see, everybody look, only change that is occurring is at your para position. So atenolol and propranolol. Atenolol, it is an acetamide, where this thing is an amide, and the other thing is your, in case of ismethylol, it is an ester. Now let's go for your structure of your labetalol. So I'll be explaining labetalol later in your cardioselectivity. Now let's go for your metoprolol. Everything is same. Okay. Now I'm just looking after cardioselective drugs. Okay. So if you see in all the cardioselective drugs, there is a substitution at the para position. So what is that thing over here? So there is a CH2. So there is an methyl ether substitution at the para. So in case of atenolol, it is an amide. In case of your ismethylol, it is an ester. ES stands for ester. So you can just remember it by is AT, that is your atenolol at AT, that stands for amide, and your metoprolol, it is an ether. It is a methyl ether. So it is an methyl ether. Okay, in case of metoprolol. So in case of atenolol, it is an amide. In case of ismethylol, it is an ester. In case of metoprolol, it is an ether linkage. So these are the basic structure. Now let us see what is happening in your pinidol. So in this pinidol, everything is same. In case of pinidol, everything is same till here. In case of pinidol, everything is same. Only thing is that instead of your benzene ring, it is attached to your indole. It is attached to your indole. Rest all things are same. Rest all things, if you see, it is same. So remembering the structure is not a difficulty. Pinidol, it is an indole. Indole. So it is an indole moiety. With the name also you can try to P indole. Para position, it is an indole moiety. It is an indole moiety. So that is a pindalol moiety. Okay. Now let's go for the next structure, that is your timolol. So structures. Timolol contains an 5-membered ring containing sulfur and 2 nitrogen next to it. Okay, that is your thiazole with the morpholine. At 1, 2, 3 position, there is a morpholine. There is a morpholine. This is the structure of your. This is the structure of your timolol, and the structure of your propranolol is similar. It contains a naphthalene ring. It contains an naphthalene ring, OCH2, CHOH, CH2, NH, isopropyl. Okay, so this is the structure of propanol. So this many structures of your drugs. So if you see, all the cardioselective drugs have got an substitution at the para position. So this is what you have to be remembered. So for cardioselectivity, there should be a substitution at the para position. So in case of atenolol, it is an acetamide A. In case of isnolol, it is an methyl propionate ester. Then in case of metoprolol, it is an ethyl methyl ester at the para position. Rest all towards the right hand side, the substitutions are same. Only thing you have to look at the para position. So it's with the name also you can try to recollect. So it is an ethyl methyl, in metoprolol it is an ethyl methyl ester, ethyl methyl ether. In case of pindolol, it contains an indole ring, and in case of timolol, it contains an thiazole ring with an morpholine substitution. So this is the structure of your timolol. In case of propranolol, your aromatic ring contains a biphenylic naphthalene ring. Okay, naphthalene ring replaces your aromatic. So this is the structure of your beta blockers. So in case of cardioselective, if you see, there is an substitution at the para position. Now let's go for the synthesis of propranolol. This is also an important question which comes in your exam. You take alpha naphthol, that is your OH. You take a naphthalene with alpha OH at your first position. You treat it with epichlorohydrin. Epichlorohydrin is nothing but a cyclic oxetane containing a CH2Cl linkage. Okay, so I'll be just showing you over here how to remember the structures of butane and alpha naphthol. That is your OH at the first position. You try to treat it with epichlorohydrin. So what is this epichlorohydrin? Chlorine CH2, which is linked to an oxetane. Okay, it is linked to an oxetane. So in presence of NaOH. In presence of NaOH. So this will react. Okay, this will react. So what do you get? OCH2. Okay, you get this. The next step is attack of your isopropylamide. So nucleophilic attack of your isopropylamide, NH2C. So this will attack over here. You get your beta ethanol linkage. You get your beta ethanol linkage. OCH2C. H, OH, CH2, N. So this is your propranolol. This is your propranolol. Very important in your examination point of view, asked frequently in your exam. You take your alpha naphthol, you treat it with epichlorohydrin in presence of NaOH, then undergoes a nucleophilic attack by isopropylamide to give your propranolol. So this is your synthesis of your propranolol. Okay. Now advantage. No postural of all this bit. No postural hypertension. No salt water retention. Low incidence of side effects. Low cost. Once a day regime preferred in young non-obese patients. Prevention of sudden cardiac arrest in post infarction patients. And congestive heart failure. Side effects: fatigue, lethargy, decreased life capacity, loss of libido, impotency, congenital defects like forgetfulness, difficult to stop suddenly, Yeah, therefore, the cardioselective drugs are preferred because of this advantage. Moreover, disadvantage, because they only act on cardio. These cardioselective drugs are prescribed. Now let's go to the central sympatholytic drug, that is alpha 2 agonist. So what are the two classes of drug? Clonidine and methyldopa. Site of action is central nervous system, medullary, cardiovascular centers. So clonidine acts directly on alpha 2, acts as a direct alpha 2 agonist, whereas methyldopa acts as a false neurotransmitter. It acts as a false neurotransmitter. So mechanism of action, they stimulate your alpha 2 receptor, and this leads to the decrease in sympathetic activity. So what happens? It is a negative feedback. So when these compounds they act, they decreases the sympathetic activity and decrease in epinephrine, norepinephrine, and decreases renin release, and this decreases your peripheral resistance as well as your this decreases your peripheral resistance. Okay, so this is your basic mechanism of action of both the drugs. So in case of the methyldopa, they act as a false neurotransmitter as well, and in case of clonidine, it directly acts as an alpha 2 agonist in your CNS medullary center. This is your mechanism of action. So now first class of drug is clonidine and methyldopa. So what is the structure of clonidine? So it contains an imidazolidine ring. Okay, if you see, it contains an imidazolidine ring. Okay, which is connected to an dichloroaniline. It contains an imidazolidine ring. It contains an imidazolidine. It contains an imidazolidine ring. Why it is called imidazolidine ring? Because it contains an diazone. So why it is called imidazolidine? N. Okay. So this is imidazole, and it contains only a double bond at this position, at one position only. Okay. That's why it is called imidazolidine. And this imidazolidine ring is connected to your dichloro. 2,6-dichloroaniline. So that is the structure of your clonidine. So your imidazolidine, it is attached to your dichloroaniline derivative. Okay, and what is this methyldopa? Methyldopa, it is nothing but your similar to your epinephrine. So CH2 and CNH2 COOH. Okay, this is your structure of your, it is similar to your dopamine and epinephrine synthesis. So that's why they act as an, so they only, this is a methylated dope. Okay, so they act as an false neurotransmitter. This is how they act. So this is your example of your clonidine. This is imidazolidine, which is connected to dichloro, and this is nothing but your analog of your, this is nothing but your analog of a dopamine. Okay, this is methylated form of your dopamine. So they act as a false neurotransmitter. They act as a false neurotransmitter. So this is the structures of your centrally acting anti-adrenergic drugs. Okay, so they will, this, what happens, this particular drug, they act as a false target. So they will inhibit the release of your epinephrine neurotransmitter, that is epinephrine, non-epinephrine, and thus they will reduce, they'll act on the peripheral vessels and reduce your vasoconstriction. Thus they will control your hypertension. Synthesis, I don't think so it is there, but still if it is there, you take 2,6-dichloroaniline, you treat it with your ammonium thiocyanate, you get your thioamide, which undergoes tautomerism, and you treat it with your methyl iodide, you get your thiomethyl derivative, and then you treat it with your, and then you treat it with your ethylene diamine, you get your cyclized product, that is your clonidine. That is your, this is the synthesis of your clonidine moiety. Okay, they are alpha 2 adrenergic selective alpha 2 adrenergic receptor agonist. This is the side effects of dry mouth, drowsiness, headache, and constipation. Alpha adrenergic blocking agent. So now this, the site of action is peripheral arterial smooth muscles. They block the alpha 1 receptors on the vascular smooth muscles and allows muscle relaxation or dilation of your vessels and reduces your peripheral resistance. So this is how the drug. They are nothing but your competitive antagonist of your alpha 1 receptor, which are present in your vascular smooth muscles. And this leads to your dilation of your vessels and decreased resistance of your total peripheral resistance, and thus control your. So example of these drugs are your prazosin, terazosin, and your doxazosin. So what do you think the structure, if you see, it contains? You look at the structure of this drug. It's quite simple. So basically, what does it contain? So it should contain quinazoline ring. It contains a quinazoline. What is this quinazoline ring? So you take, this is quinoline. Azoline means it contains another nitrogen. That is what quinazoline. So this is your basic. This contains a 2-methoxy group and an NH2. So this is your quinoxylene ring containing an, so if you're numbering 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. So this quinoxylene contains an amino substitution at the 4th and methoxy substitution at your 6th and 7th. And at the second position of the ring is attached to a piperazine. Is attached to your piperazine. It is connected to a piperazine. It is connected to a piperazine, and this piperazine is then connected to an acyl group, to an acyl moiety. So this is R. So in case of prazosin, your R is your furane moiety. It's your furate. In case of terazosin, it is an tetrahydrofurane moiety. So your prazosin is an unsaturated ring, and in case of terazosin, it is an saturated tetrahydro. And in case of doxazosin, it contains an benzofused dioxane ring. Okay, so it contains a benzofused dioxane ring which is attached to your by an acyl moiety to your piperazine and your quinoxylene ring. So this is the structure. So basic thing that you have to always remember by doing the structure is your quinoxylene, that is 1,3 position should contain the nitrogen in your quinoxylene ring, with the 6th and 7th position contain your methoxy and an amino at the 4th position, and at the 2nd position of your quinoxylene is connected to your piperazine, which in turn is connected by an acyl group to your another heteroatom like your furane, tetrahydrofurane type of moiety. So this thing, presence of all these things is necessary for your activity. The presence of your 4th amino group heteromoiety at the 2nd position is essential for your alpha 1 receptor antagonist activity. So this is the structure of your alpha 1 antagonist. Alpha 1 antagonist. Okay. Example of prazosin, as I explained, the structure. It contains an quinoxaline, which is connected to your piperazine ring, which is then connected to your furan by an acyl group, that is a carbonyl group. This is the structure of prazosin. Now let's go for beta and alpha adrenergic blockers. Beta and alpha adrenergic, because what do you mean by this? They got activity against both beta receptor as well as your alpha receptors. They are very much important in your control. So why they are important? So this alpha mediated vasoconstriction is possible for the regulation of your vascular tone. So your peripheral tension can be controlled by your alpha 1 alpha receptors, and beta mediated response can stimulate your heart directly and indirectly liberating of your renin system, as we have seen in beta blockers. So the beta receptors are responsible for your heart rate and release of your renin, whereas alpha are responsible for your vasoconstriction in your peripheral blood vessels. Okay, so beta adrenergic blocking agents have both been established in the treatment of hyper. As I mentioned earlier, these beta blockers have been established in the treatment of your hyper. The development of drug which combines this action with an alpha receptor. So if you try to combine the beta blocking along with your alpha blocking effect, represents an additional mode of action to lower the blood pressure. So when you combine your beta as well as alpha receptor blockers, so this will be show a combined. So it is a beta 1 and alpha 1 receptor blockers. So they will simultaneously reduce your blood pressure. So Newman, and this study was demonstrated by labetalol when it gives intravenous and gave rapid fall in pressure in essential and renal hypertension. So these drugs showed a rapid fall in your blood pressure in case of essential and renal hypertension. It has been used intravenous in pheochromocytomia, tetanus, clonidine withdrawal, and as an adjuvant to halothane to produce hypertension during your anesthesia. So they are given along with your halothane during your to produce hypertension during your anesthesia. And they are also used for treatment of clonidine withdrawal. They are also used for the treatment of your clonidine. So clonidine is an centrally acting alpha 2 agonist. So they are used for the treatment of your clonidine withdrawal symptoms. Okay, now the structure over here. So if you see the structure of your labetalol, what do you see? First of all, in case of labetalol, if you see the structure of labetalol, let's go. Aromatic ring. So in other case, that's the reason I'm taking this separately. In case of other, there was OCS2 link, where in case of your labetalol, there is no. Directly it is attached to your beta ethanol. Okay, beta ethanol. So there is a direct attachment. If you can see the structure. So there is an aromatic ring which is directly attached to your beta ethanol amine. So this is a difference. You have to look out for this. So, and it has got a small substitution at the para. So that means it has a substitution at the para position, means it has got an beta blocking activity. Moreover, it has got an substitution at the meta position by an amidic substitution. Okay, so there is a phenolic and an amidic substitution in your labetalol, and your amine is also a secondary amine, but over here it is not an isopropyl. It is 1, 2, 3, 4. It contains an phenyl butyl amine substitution. Okay, phenyl butyl 1, 2, 3. So it contains an phenyl butyl substitution. Okay, this is the difference between your laboratory. The base difference is there is no X over here. There is no OCH2 linker. That is the difference. That is the first difference. Second difference, it has got an hydroxyl and an amide at hydroxyl at the para and amide at the meta position. And your instead of your isopropyl group, it contains phenyl butyl. Okay, one, two, three, four. So it is a phenyl butylamine substitution. Okay, so these are the difference in structure of your labetalol and your other beta blockers and other beta blockers. Next is carvedipol. Okay, if you see over here, it is just it contains. What is the difference over here? If you see, it's an ethanol amine, but the only difference is there is no OH over here at your beta position. There is no OH at the beta position. Okay, and it is connected by O. It is connected by O. There is an ether linkage. Okay, and a methoxy at the ortho position, and it contains an fused indole ring, fused indole ring, which is connected by an ether linkage to your amine. So this is the structure of your current. It is a non-selective beta and selective alpha-1 blocker. Okay, it produces vasodilation and has got additional antioxidant free radical scavenging activity. Side effect similar to that of your labetalol. Okay, so these are the structure of your carbidopa. Okay, now the vasodilator. So that completes your sympatholytic. Now let's go for the vasodilator. So some of the drugs of this category are your hydralazine, minoxidil, nitroprusside, dioxide, phenoldiazepam. These are the drugs. Site of action, these are the various types. You can see where the drugs act. Okay. Site of action is your vascular smooth muscle. So they act on, these all drugs act on the vascular smooth. And let us see how each drug acts. So now let's see, the first example is phenoldiazepam. Okay. They activate your dopamine receptor. They activate your dopamine receptors on your vascular smooth muscles in your arterioles. So it's arterioles, the dopamine receptor are present. This phenoldiazepam, they act over there. This, and in low doses, dopamine stimulates the primarily dopamine receptor vasodilation. So what happens in the low doses only, they will stimulate your vasodilatory effect of your dopamine. At high dosages, they stimulate beta 1 receptor positive inotropic effect and increases. So at the dosage should always be maintained. At high doses, they can stimulate your beta 1 receptor, and this beta 1 receptor will increase your inotropic effect and increases your cardiac output. Also increases your renin, norepinephrine release from your vascular nerve terminal and causes vasoconstriction. So this drug should always be given at the low dosage. At high dosages, it has got a reverse effect. Okay, so at low doses, they stimulate a dopamine, which causes your vasodilation. Okay, these are present on your vascular smooth. So next drug is hydralazine. So they alter the intracellular calcium. So they alter the level of your calcium in your smooth muscles and increases the nitrous oxide in your arteriole. So they increase the level of your nitrous oxide in your arteriole. So this nitrous oxide are responsible for your vasodilation. Okay, and they also try to alter the calcium ion by increasing the nitric oxide in your artery. Now, what is nitroprusside? So next class of drug is nitroprusside. These nitroprussides induces nitric oxide from your endothelial cells present in your arteries. So this they release your nitrous oxide, which leads to your vasodilatation. And minoxidil, what is this? And dioxide, they open the potassium channels on the arterial membrane and stabilizes. So what happens when the potassium ions are opened? When the potassium channels are opened, your potential, more of potassium goes off, and there is an delayed hyperpolarization. So there is an hyperpolarization, and this reduces your contractility of your blood vessels. So this is how the drug acts, different drugs. Now let's go into each drug. Okay. So vasodilator drugs which predominantly cause venodilatory effect, means they act on the venous drug. So nitrates, which reduces your preload. What is this preload? Means how much drug goes back from your venous to your drug. So they reduce the preload, means it causes the dilation of your venous vessels and thus reduces the preload. Drugs with predominant arterial dilations effect are hydrolizin. So this nitrate act on your venous vessels, whereas the other drugs like hydrolizin, minoxidil, they act on the arteriolar dilation, means they have effect on your afterload. Okay, hydrolizin, minoxidil, they reduce their afterload. So because of your increased vasodilation of your arteriolar vessels, they will reduce your afterload. And mixed arterial and venodilators are ACE inhibitor, angiotensin antagonist, sodium nitroprusside, which reduce both your preload and afterload. Okay, so this is the classification of your vasodilator, where they act according to that you can. So hydrolizin structure is quite similar, very simple. The structure is very simple. Synthesis is not that important for you in your exam, but the structure is being asked along with the use. Structure is asked. So first thing that you remember, it is an pyridazine which is fused to your benzene. It's a benzo-fused pyridazine which contains an hydrazine at the so this is 1, 2, 3. So it is a benzo-fused pyridazine which contains an hydrazine, okay, which contains an hydrazine. Okay, the structure is very simple to be remembered. It is asked frequently in the exam for 2 marks. Okay. Next class of drug is your potassium channel. Example, nicorandil. Example is nicorandil. The structure is nothing. It is a nicotinic amide which is connected to an ethyl nitro. Okay, it is nothing but your, let's see the structure. It is nothing but your nicotine amide. Okay, this is nicotine amide which is connected to an ethyl. Okay, which is connected to an ethyl nitrate substitution. Okay, it is attached to an ethyl nitrate substitution. It is an nicotinic amide which is connected to an ethyl nitrate substitution. So this is the structure of your nicorandil. These are the drugs which open the ATP activated potassium channels in your smooth muscle. So they open the potassium channel in your smooth muscles. Okay, so what happens when the potassium channels are opened? What happens when the potassium? There is an prominent action in your hyperpolarization. As I said, this leads to your hyperpolarization and relaxation of your vascular smooth muscle as well as visceral smooth muscle. So they will relax your vascular as well as visceral smooth muscles. This action closes the voltage gated calcium channel. So when there is a lot of liberation of your potassium, this closes your voltage gated calcium ion. So thus it reduces your intracellular calcium. So and once this calcium, intracellular calcium is reduced, this will prevent your contraction and this leads to your relaxation and vasodilation. So there is one thing. First is it leads to your hyperpolarization and relaxation of your smooth muscles as well. Moreover, due to this opening of your potassium channel, this leads to your closing of your calcium channels, calcium ion channels. Okay, thus reduces your amount of calcium which is responsible for your contraction, and thus it causes your relaxation and your vasodilation. This is the next drug is minoxidil. This drug is also asked in your exam for 2 marks. Structure and uses of your minoxidil. It is a directly acting vasodilator and it is administered as an inactive form and gets transformed by the enzyme liver sulfotransferase into your active minoxidil sulfate. So your minoxidil is an example of your prodrug. So once it goes into your body in the liver, it gets transformed by your enzyme sulfotransferase into your sulfate, which is your active metabolite, and they are directly acting vasodilators. Okay, so the structure is nothing. You have to draw a, just make it simple for the structure. So there is a way that you have to remember the structure. So the basic unit is an pyrimidine. So basic it is an pyrimidine moiety, that is 1,2,1,3-diazine with an N oxide first and amino at the second, and the 6th position contains an amino group, and the 4th is carbon is attached to your piperidine. So this is your minoxidil. This is your minoxidil. Okay. So this is the structure of your minoxidil. So in the liver it gets converted to your sulfate and becomes an active by the enzyme sulfotransferase. They are direct acting vasodilator. They are directly acting vasodilator. Now let's go for the next class of the drug, that is calcium channel blockers. Next class of drug is calcium channel. So there are 3 subclasses in that: phenylalkylamine, that is verapamil, benzodiazepine, that is diltiazem, and next is dihydropyridine derivatives, that is first generation nifedipine, second generation is nicardipine, felodipine, and the third generation is your amlodipine. The third generation is your amlodipine. Okay, example. This is a very important question, 5-mark question from examination point of. Okay, so mechanism of action of your calcium channel blockers. So in the body tissues, the concentration of your calcium outside is normally about 100 times fold higher than the concentration. So your calcium is present more in the extracellular fluid rather than the intracellular. Okay, it is more, and embedded in the membranes of some cells are calcium. So each cells contain the calcium channels. Okay, each contains a voltage gated calcium channel which are present. So these cells receive a signal and the channels open. So it is an voltage gated channel. So it receives a signal, and once that voltage is reached, then they will open the calcium channel, and there is letting the rush of calcium into the cells. So when the potential reaches, then the calcium channels open and there is a rush of calcium inside the cell, resulting increase in the intracellular calcium, and this has different effects on different types of cells. As we have seen in case of insulin, in pancreatic cells, the influx of your calcium causes the release of your insulin, whereas in case of cardiac muscles, this influx of calcium causes constriction, vasoconstriction. Okay, so the calcium channel blockers prevent or reduce the opening of this calcium and thereby reduce the effect. So what is the effect in the cardiac muscles? It will reduce the contractility and Thus, it will control the peripheral resistance. Okay. So there are three types of calcium channels in the smooth muscle. They are voltage sensitive, receptor operated, and leak channels. Okay, they are voltage gated channels. The voltage sensitives are of three types: L type, T type, and N type. Normally, L type of channels admit calcium and causes depolarization. So what are the mostly in your cardiac muscle? It is the L type of channels that are present which admit the calcium into the cells and causes depolarization or excitation, contraction, coupling through your phosphorylation of your myosin light channels. So this myosin light channels, light chain are present in your cardiac muscles and your smooth muscles, and this leads to your contraction of your vascular smooth muscle, leading to your elevation in your BP. Calcium channel blockers block the L-type channels in your smooth muscle. This causes negative inotropic effect and chronotropic effect. Okay, it causes negative chronotropic and inotropic effect in the heart. What is this negative chronotropic? So it reduces your heart rate as well as your pumping. Okay, cardiac output as well as your tone. So these are the examples. So in case of dihydropyridine, they have the highest smooth muscle relaxation and vasodilatory action, followed by verapamil and your delta. So in case of dihydropyridine, they have got the highest smooth muscle relaxation ability and vasodilatory act compared to that of your verapamil and delta. And other actions of dihydropyridine, they have diuretic action also. So most preferred one in case of antihypertensive is your dihydropyridine, because they are have high effective in case of your smooth muscle relaxation. So now let's go for the example. The first example is phenylalkylamine. So the first example is verapamil. If you see the structure of verapamil, it's quite simple. The structure is quite simple. Just look at the structure. So it contains an first go for this phenyl ring containing a methoxy at the third and the fourth position. Okay, phenylalkylamine. So it is a phenylalkylamine. So this is connected to an alkyl group, that is your CH2 ethyl. So this is connected to an ethyl alkyl group and amine nitrogen. Okay, it is an tertiary amine. Again, it is connected by to an CH2 methoxy. Okay, this is ethyl, methyl, and propyl. Okay, ethyl, methyl, and propyl. And one of the carbon in your propyl group is connected to your cyano and an isopropyl group. Isopropyl group. So if you see your right hand side and left hand side aromatic ring is the same. It is 3,4-dimethoxy phenyl. Okay, it is connected. Your left hand side is connected to an ethyl methyl amine, which is connected to an propyl group with an cyano and an isopropyl. So this is the structure of your verapamil. So remember, this is 3,4-dimethoxy phenyl, which is connected to an ethyl group, which is in turn connected to an N-methyl and propyl group. And one of the carbon in your propyl group, that is the terminal carbon in your propyl group, is connected to a cyano and an isopropyl group. Okay, so this is the structure of your verapamil. Very important to be remembered. Okay, this is the structure of your verapamil. Now let's go for the structure of your deltiazine. Let's go for the structure of your deltiazine. Now let's go for the structure of your deltiazine. It is an example of so benzene ring, which is contains an sulfur and a nitrogen. Okay, benzene ring containing an sulfur and nitrogen at your 1 and 2 position. This forms a 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Okay, so let's go one by one. So first position, it is connected, the sulfur is connected to an methoxyphenol, for methoxyphenol. This is then connected to an O acetate. Okay, then there is nothing over here. This is then connected to an, contains an carbonyl group and an amine, and this nitrogen is connected to an ethyl NN dimethyl ethyl amine. Okay, NN dimethyl ethyl amine. So this is the structure of your delta. So how many? So your benzene is connected to your 7-membered ring containing your sulfur and nitrogen. So one at the second position of the ring, it contains an anisole, that is para-anisole. Okay. Next to that, it is an O acetam, O amide. Okay. Then nothing over here, followed by a carbonyl group and an N. This N is connected to an NN dimethyl ethyl amine group. Okay, this is the structure of your deltiazine. And the next structure is of your nifedipine. That I'll be explaining when I'll be teaching you the structures. So first two classes, phenylalkylamine and your. So next class of drugs is your. Next class of drug is your 1,4-dihydropyridine. Next class of drug is 1,4-dihydropyridine. Why it is called 1,4-dihydro? If you see the structure, the nitrogen and at the first and the fourth position contains an hydrogen. That's why it is called a 1,4-dihydropyridine. Right. And it contains an alkyl group or an at your at the second and sixth position, and an ester substitution at the third and the fifth position, and the fourth position is connected to an aromatic ring with a substitution. So these are the structure. Now let's go for the SAR. So what all things are essential for your in your dihydropyridine? The following section things are essential for your active. So if you see 1,4-dihydropyridine skeleton, so there should be, if you see on the structure, I'll show you with the okay. So if you see, look at the cursor, this is 1 and 4th position, there is hydrogen, extra hydrogen. That's why it is known as 1,4-dihydropyridine. This is very much important for the activity. A secondary nitrogen in the, so there should be a secondary nitrogen at the, in the dihydropyridine, the aromatic ring or the heteroaromatic substitution at the 4th carbon. So there should be an aromatic or an heteroaromatic substitution at the 4th position. If you see over here, this is the record. So in the aromatic substituent, further substitution should be an ortho. So moreover, the aromatic ring which is attached at the 4th position should contain an substitution at the ortho position, and more preferred over meta and para position, which makes the compound inert. So there should be substitution only at the preferred is over the ortho position. Moreover, the substitution at the ortho position should always be an electron withdrawing group, more in comparison to an electron releasing. So you should have an electron withdrawing group at the ortho position of your aromatic. So these are the requirements of your dihydropyridine. So if you see in the structure, it should be a secondary amine. The ring should be secondary amine. The position at the second and the sixth, it should contain an, at the second position, methyl is present, except in case of amlodipine. That's all it is methyl. Okay, this position is necessary, highly potent. So this is necessary for the active. So at the third position, it should contain an ester group for optimum activity. Nitro may decrease. So it should have an ester group at the third position. Similarly, in the fifth position also, it should contain an ester. Now let us see on the fourth position. The fourth position should contain an aromatic ring. So it should contain an aromatic ring, and the aromatic ring should have an substitution, more favored substitution at the ortho position, and it should be an electron withdrawing group at the ortho position. So it should have an electron withdrawing group like nitrochloro or such group at the ortho position. Okay. Side effect is lightheadedness, low blood pressure, low heart rate, constipation, drowsiness, swelling of feet, ankles, and leg, increased appetite. Contraindicated in unstable angina, heart failure, hypertension. Okay. So nifedipine, I don't think the synthesis is there, but you have to know the structure of nifedipine. So if you see the structure of nifedipine, if you see the structure of your nifedipine, look at them both carefully. The structure of nifedipine. First you have to draw your see, you should always draw 1,4-dihydropyridine and an aromatic ring at the fourth position. This is the basic thing for every structure. Now, in case of nifedipine, it has got methyl at the second and the sixth position, and at the third position, it contains an methyl ester. It contains an methyl. So this is your dihydropyridine NH. Okay. Now, in case of nifedipine, it contains an nitro at the ortho position. Okay, this is the structure of your nifedipine. This is the structure of your nifedipine. Now let's go for other structure. If you see in this particular this thing, so they have shown it with an schematic way of reference. So if in case of amlodipine, look at the structure which is shown schematically. Let's draw the structure. NH. So this is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Okay. Second position should always be a methyl. Third position, an ester, that is your R. Fourth position, this is R3. This is another R2. Okay. And this is your R. Okay. R1, R2, R3, and your substitution in your ring. So in case of amlodipine, so over here, this R1 is an CH ethyl methyl CH. It is an ethyl amine ester. Okay, ether. So it contains an ethyl amine ester over here. Okay, CH2 and if you see it, the R2 is your ethyl, and so this is your ethyl ester, and this one is your methyl. So your the methyl. Okay, methyl ester in the same, but over here there is an methyl ethylamine as ether linkage over here, and there is an ethyl ester. And in case of amlodipine, your second position X is chlorine at your second position. This is the structure of your amlodipine, and this is an example of your third generation. This is an example of your third generation dihydropyridine. So let's draw the structure again. This is your dihydropyridine. Methyl over here should be always constant. Over here it contains an methyl ethylamine ester, ether linkage. This is followed by an ethyl ester, and an similar over here it is a methyl ester. Now this contains an chlorine at the ortho. So this is the structure of your amlodipine. Now let's go for the structure of your phenoldiphine. Now let's go for the structure of your phenoldiphine. Phenoldiphine is quite the same. This is methyl ester, and there is an methyl group. This is a methyl ester over here, and then over here it contains an chlorine at the second and the third position. So if you see the structure of phenoldiphine, it contains a methyl group at the second and the sixth position. Third position it contains an ethyl ester. At the fifth position it contains an ethyl ester. Third position it contains an fifth position ethyl, and third position methyl ester. And the aromatic ring contains dichloro substitution at the second and the third position, at the ortho and the meta. That is the structure of your phenoldiphine. Now nifedipine, then it is similar. Only thing is that in case of nifedipine, methyl, it is methyl and a nitro. That is your nifedipine. Nitrandipine, in case of nitrandipine, R1 is methyl, R2 is methyl. Only thing is that there is a shift in the position. Methyl, only thing there is a shift in your ester. Okay, and the nitrogen goes at the meta position. That is your nitrogen. And nimodipine, and in case of nimodipine, it is a methyl and an methyl ether ester. Okay, and an isopropyl, and a nitro at the third position in your line. So these are some of the examples. Just remember this example of amlodipine, nifedipine, phenoldiphine, and so according to each generation. So these are the structures you have to remember. In case of 1,4-dihydropyridine. 1,4. Now the synthesis. Synthesis I'll be explaining to you later. Now comes the next compound, that is your angiotensin converting enzyme. Next is your angiotensin converting enzyme, that inhibitor. So the first is how does this angiotensin converting enzyme inhibitor, how they act. So when there is a decrease in blood pressure, the kidney releases your renin, and they get activated by your angiotensinogen, which is liberated from your liver. So angiotensinogen, they get converted into your angiotensin 1, which is a weak vasoconstrictor. This angiotensin 1 gets acted by your angiotensin converting enzyme to get converted into your angiotensin, which is a potent vasodilate. Okay, and this causes your peripheral vasoconstriction, and also release of your aldosterone, which causes increase in sodium and water retention and leads to your increased blood volume. And The next is peripheral vasoconstriction. This causes your also increase in your total peripheral resistance. This leads to your blood increase in blood. So where does this drug act? This angiotensin inhibitor drug, they act on the angiotensin inhibiting enzyme, and your angiotensin 2 blocker, they block the angiotensin 2 by at the receptors. They block the binding of your angiotensin 2 to the receptors in your blood vessel, adrenaline, and all other tissues. This is where the drug act. So now let's go for the structure. So angiotensinogen is converting enzyme. It's a zinc containing glycoprotein. It is a zinc containing the important binding site of your AC are the cationic site. So this uh, converting enzymes are cationic site to attract carboxylate. So they attack the carboxylate and the zinc ion that can polarize your carbonyl ion of your amide function to make it more susceptible to your heterogen. So in the structure of your anti-AC inhibitors, there should be a group which is responsible for binding to your zinc binding site of your angiotensin converting. Such groups are your sulfhydryl group, carboxylate group, and your phosphate. They are all the active sites for your binding with your AC inhibitor. So these are the active sites which are necessary for binding with your AC inhibitors. So among the, as I explained, so among the zinc binding group, sulfhydryl group is superior, but they form disulfide linkage. This makes the shorter duration of it. So end ring must contain, so if you see in the structures later on I will be explained, it should contain a carboxylic acid. So your pyrrolate ring should contain a carboxylic group which mimic the C terminal of your carboxylate group of your AC substrate. So they act similar to your carboxylic group of your AC substrate. Larger hydrophilic heterocyclic ring in the nitrogen ring increases the potency. Larger hydrophilic heterocyclic ring in the nitrogen ring increases the potency and alter the pharmacology. So your pyridine proline ring is very much important for the activity. The X is usually a methyl group. So if you see, so X is usually a methyl group in your structure. So this is your basic structure of your, if you see over here, this is the basic structure. So this zinc binding site should be always CH2 methyl, such groups, phosphate. The nitrogen ring, which I was explaining, should contain a carboxylic group which mimics that to your AC substrate. Okay, which mimics your alanine substrate in your AC substrate. And the stereochemistry of the inhibitor should be optimum occurs with your L-amino. So the stereochemistry of all your inhibitors should always be of L-amino acids. So your stereospecific reactions. Okay, these are stereospecific reactions. So you have to look into your stereochemistry of the drug also. So these are some of the examples. Okay, sulfhydryl group containing, it's your captopril. So the basic structure over here, if you see, it contains an proline moiety. It contains an proline amino acid which is connected by a carboxylic carbonyl group to your propyl thio group. Okay, which is connected to a propyl thio group, that is your sulfhydryl group linkage. Okay, in case of dicarboxylate group containing, example are lisinopril and enalapril. So lisinopril, so if you see the structure over here, amide, so your methyl group is replaced by an 1, 2, 3, 4. Ethylene 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. That is your pentylamine, and it is this is over here connected to your phenylbutyric acid. It is connected to your phenylbutyric. This is the structure of your dicarboxylate group. Okay. Phosphate group, lisinopril. So it contains an phosphate group instead of your amide. It contains an phosphate group. It contains an phosphate group. Okay, these are the examples of your drugs. So I'll be doing this later, angiotensin converting enzyme, and later, if it's too much. Tomorrow I'll be taking this topic. It's almost